One of the big pieces of news that has people buzzing here in Washington and around the country who follow the House in particular, uh, there has been news of an alleged affair between centrist Tony Gonzalez of Texas and an aide. And not only that, but that this aide last year killed herself. She set herself on fire. He has denied this and is accusing opponents basically of coming after him. But now we're talking about an ethics investigation into this here in Washington. It used to be that when allegations like this came out, John Boehner, Paul Ryan, they'd call you into their office and they'd tell you it's time to go. I've covered a number of them. I'm Pelosi with Katie Hill. She had a relationship with an underling in her office. I'm thinking of Trent Franks when there was reporting, actually it was my story, that he had asked aides in his office to carry his child because him and his wife were having trouble conceiving. And that led to his ouster as well. So a lot of people have been told to leave for less. That is not likely to happen here because of the slim majority, but there is still potential for Democrats to try to tee up a vote at some point to oust this guy. And we've already got to think about how narrow the majority is. Sean, like, how concerned are Republicans that they could lose their majority before the midterms here?
Well, I think very. I mean, look, you're going to get a little bit of a breathing room so you got a 1-seat majority now. Marjorie Taylor's vacated seat will have a new member in a couple of weeks. That gets it back to 2. The Gonzalez, now remember, there's a primary in Texas. The Gonzalez is facing a very strong primary. That doesn't solve you in the short term, but it would take some heat off Johnson, which is if Gonzalez lost his primary and you had a new person going in, they'd say, well, he's already leaving. He's not going to be back next term. Like, let's it gives Johnson some out, right? So it doesn't help, but it gives him the ability to say to members, hey guys, he's already leaving. Like, we don't need to have a vote to expel him, right? It's a talking point. But you also have this issue in Florida where you've got a member of Congress that's announced he's not running, rumored to have some serious health issues, and saying, I may leave before the term. That would be the end. You would literally, they would call a motion, on the chair for vacate the chair. If I were Democrats, I would, you would reorganize. I mean, it's potentially very, very concerning is the answer.
Yeah.
So this is a big deal. And if I were a Democrat, you'd really start to think. Now, again, you've got to remember short-term, long-term. So if you're Hakeem Jeffries, do you really want to make sure that you're doing, like, is this worth the squeeze right now? Because let's face it, you feel good if you're Jeffries about taking it. If you want to do a hostile takeover, politically speaking, which is what it would, be the equivalent of a corporate takeover. Are you willing to deal with that? Because suddenly you become speaker, in 6 months on your own, potentially. And then you've got Republicans that say, okay, you want to go this? Now I'm coming after every one of your members.
But the base would just love it, wouldn't they?
Oh, I know. I get it. And I'm saying, but to your question, if I were Johnson, this goes back to what we talked about before about the whip operation. I would be doing nightly bed checks, making sure that nobody's ever driving after one beer. Like, you need to have your members in line.
And by the way, when we were talking about them losing the majority just a few months ago, could it happen? Like somebody said to me, these were the 2 things that this person brought up. Gonzalez, the investigation, is off the record at the time, so I couldn't talk about it. That one, and then the other one was this member in Florida who's having health issues. So anyway, Dan, like, do you think Democrats would go? They would go for it, right? They would have to. The base would demand it, of course. Yeah.
100%, because I can tell you what they would love to do before the midterms: oversight hearings. They would absolutely love to blow the lid off of some of this alleged corruption and unethical behavior. New behavior, as is the term I think some are using. If nothing else, if you are forcing people to have to come in to explain what, Trump yesterday talked about the ballroom. We still don't know who's given how much money, right? So they're just, I know you're going to roll your eyes, Sean, but it's uncomfortable, right? A candidate in a House race does not want to have to sit there where, let's say, if an AI data center is a huge issue in your district, and you're like, yep, Meta wrote I'm making this up. I don't know this to be fact. Meta wrote $30 million to the White House, right? It's just a tough thing. It's like, I don't want to talk about that.
Yeah.
So Democrats would take it lockstep and barrel.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And here's the thing. I mean, look, I got to tell you, like, when you actually look at this, there's a rule in the House that governs interactions between members and employees in terms of, and
Yes,
this
there
is,
are.
and this could be a big problem, because the reporting isn't just that this happened and he's denying it. The husband of this former staffer is saying, I don't blame her death and her suicide on Gonzalez, but yes, the affair was real.
And there's texts too, Sean. Before she died, she texted a fellow staffer and said, I had an affair with my boss, our boss. And like, so those are out there as well. So, and by the way, Gonzalez hasn't said a lot since this all came out. So one dynamic that I think is interesting, and we do need to move on this, is, like I said, like, it feels like people are trying to, when these things come up, people are trying to fight them now. There's like a very, like, stick it, like, say, I did nothing wrong, almost like a Trumpian sort of, I can survive this. And it'll be curious to see if he can, because, Corey Mills, another.
One last point, Rachel, which is the X factor, right? So Doug LaMaffa from California passed away suddenly. And that's another vacancy on the Republican side. And I only say this because you can come up with the best plan if you're Johnson, but God forbid. And I mean, I say this, that like, there's just something could happen. Somebody gets, breaks their leg and has to be out for 2 weeks. And suddenly, like, if I were Democrats, you go, hey, why not throw a vote up? And so there's some serious issues that I have a feeling somebody is sitting around, like, nose deep in the House rules, talking about procedures and historical precedents, etc.
I know for a fact that is true.